Colonel Marcus Thompson stood at the edge of the airfield, watching the sun glint off the damaged Apache helicopter that had been sitting there for 3 weeks. The AH-64D longbow had cost taxpayers $40 million, and now it was nothing more than an expensive paperweight. He rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of his upcoming meeting with General Harrison, who would demand answers he simply didn't have. The helicopter had been damaged during a training exercise when a hydraulic failure caused an emergency landing. What should have been a routine repair had turned into a bureaucratic nightmare. The military's top mechanics had tried everything, but the specialized parts needed were backordered for months. Meanwhile, the pressure from Washington was mounting daily. "Sir, the contractors are here for another assessment," announced Lieutenant Jessica Rodriguez, approaching with a clipboard full of reports. She looked as frustrated as he felt. The past 3 weeks had been a parade of expensive consultants, each promising solutions that led nowhere. Marcus nodded grimly. This was the fourth team of civilian contractors brought in to examine the helicopter. The first team had quoted 6 months and $3 million. The second team suggested cannibalization from other aircraft. The third team had simply walked away, claiming the damage was more extensive than initially reported. As he walked toward the helicopter, Marcus noticed the chain-link fence that surrounded the airfield. It was standard military security, topped with razor wire and monitored by cameras. Beyond the fence, he could see the homeless encampment that had sprung up over the past year. The city had tried to relocate them several times, but they always returned to the wooded area just outside the base perimeter. The new contractor team was already at work, their expensive equipment spread around the helicopter like a high-tech crime scene. Dr. Patricia Wells, the lead engineer, emerged from beneath the aircraft with grease-stained coveralls and a concerned expression. "Colonel Thompson, I need to be honest with you," she said, pulling off her work gloves. "This isn't just about the hydraulic system anymore. The emergency landing caused cascade failures throughout multiple systems. We're looking at complete avionics replacement, structural reinforcement, and engine overhaul." Marcus felt his heart sink. "What's the timeline and cost?" 8 months minimum, probably closer to 12. Cost estimate is between $8 and $15 million, depending on parts availability. Dr. Wells shook her head. "Frankly, at this point, you might be better off writing it off as a total loss." The weight of those words hit Marcus like a physical blow. A $40 million helicopter, reduced to scrap metal because of a single hydraulic failure. The military's acquisition process had become so complex and specialized that even basic repairs required months of bureaucratic approval and millions in contractor fees. Lieutenant Rodriguez approached with another update. "Sir, General Harrison's office called. He's moved the briefing to tomorrow morning. He wants a full damage assessment and repair timeline. Marcus stared at the helicopter, wondering how he would explain to his superiors that their most advanced attack helicopter had been defeated not by enemy fire, but by their own system's inability to fix it efficiently. The autumn sun was setting, casting long shadows across the airfield. Soon, the contractors would pack up their equipment and return to their hotels, leaving the helicopter to sit in expensive solitude for another night. Marcus had begun to wonder if this machine would ever fly again. As he prepared to leave, a commotion near the fence caught his attention. Security was responding to something, but from this distance, he couldn't make out the details. Whatever it was, it seemed minor compared to the $40 million problem sitting in front of him. The homeless encampment beyond the fence had grown larger in recent weeks. Marcus had heard complaints from base security about people trying to climb the fence, usually looking for food or shelter. It was a persistent problem, but hardly his main concern right now. Dr. Wells was packing up her equipment, clearly defeated by the helicopter's complexity. "Colonel, I'll have a full report by tomorrow, but I don't expect it to contain good news. This bird is going to require a complete rebuild." Marcus nodded, already dreading tomorrow's meeting with General Harrison. How do you explain to a room full of military leaders that the most technologically advanced helicopter in their arsenal had been grounded by problems that seemed impossible to solve? The security commotion near the fence was getting louder, with several guards now involved. Marcus decided to investigate, if only to distract himself from the helicopter disaster. As he walked toward the fence, he could see a figure in tattered clothing arguing with the security personnel. "I'm telling you, I can fix that helicopter," the man was saying, pointing through the fence at the Apache. "I worked on these systems for 20 years before everything went to hell." The security guards were clearly not taking him seriously, but something about the man's voice made Marcus pause. There was a technical precision in his words that didn't match his disheveled appearance. Marcus approached the fence, studying the homeless man more carefully. Despite his rough exterior, there was something in his eyes that suggested intelligence and experience. His hands, though dirty, moved with the precise gestures of someone who had once worked with complex machinery. "What's your name?" Marcus asked through the fence. The man looked up, surprised that an officer was addressing him directly. "Robert Chen, sir. Master Sergeant, retired. I worked on Apache systems at Fort Bragg for 2 decades before medical discharge." The name sounded familiar, but Marcus couldn't place it immediately. "What makes you think you can fix this helicopter when our best contractors can't?" Robert's eyes lit up with the intensity of someone who had been dismissed too many times. Because I know these birds inside and out, I've seen this exact failure pattern before, and I know the workaround that isn't in any manual. Marcus felt a spark of hope, despite the absurdity of the situation. A homeless veteran claiming he could fix what teams of expensive contractors couldn't. It sounded like desperation talking, but at this point, what did he have to lose? The security guards were getting impatient, clearly wanting to move Robert along. But Marcus held up a hand, signaling them to wait. There was something about this man's confidence that intrigued him. Even if you know the systems, we'd need proper authorization, security clearance, and about a dozen other approvals, Marcus explained. The military doesn't just let people work on $40 million aircraft. Robert nodded, understanding. I know the process, sir. But I also know that helicopter is going to sit there for months while contractors bill the government millions for repairs that shouldn't cost more than a few $1,000s. The truth of those words stung. Marcus had seen the estimates, the timelines, the endless bureaucratic delays. The system designed to protect expensive military assets had become so complex that it actually prevented those assets from being functional. Lieutenant Rodriguez approached, having overheard the conversation. "Sir, should I have security escort him away?" Marcus looked at the helicopter, then back at Robert. A crazy idea was forming in his mind, one that could either solve his problem or end his career. Sometimes, desperate situations called for desperate measures. "What specific failure are you seeing?" Marcus asked Robert, testing his knowledge. Robert pointed at the helicopter with surprising accuracy. Hydraulic system failure cascaded into the flight control computers. The contractors are treating it like separate problems, but it's actually a single issue with the backup power relay. Replace that one component, reset the system, and she'll fly. The technical detail was impressive, but Marcus had heard similar claims from contractors who had ultimately failed. Still, something about Robert's certainty was compelling. "How can you be so sure?" Marcus asked. Robert's expression grew serious. "Because I designed the workaround procedure for this exact problem back in 2019. It never made it into official documentation due to budget cuts, but I've used it successfully 3 times." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. If this man was telling the truth, he might have found the solution to his $40 million problem. But if he was wrong, or if this was some elaborate scheme, Marcus could face court-martial for allowing an unauthorized person near classified military equipment. The weight of the decision pressed down on him. General Harrison's meeting was tomorrow morning, and Marcus had no good options to present. The contractors had failed, the bureaucracy had failed, and the helicopter continued to sit useless on the tarmac. Robert seemed to sense his internal struggle. "Sir, I understand your position, but that helicopter represents more than just money. It's the safety of pilots and the success of missions. I can't stand by and watch it waste away when I know I can fix it." The passion in Robert's voice was unmistakable. This wasn't just about proving himself or getting attention. This was about a professional who couldn't bear to see his life's work abandoned due to bureaucratic incompetence. Marcus made his decision. "Lieutenant Rodriguez, I need you to run a background check on Robert Chen, former Master Sergeant. I want everything, service record, security clearance history, the works." "Sir, are you considering?" Rodriguez began. "I'm considering all options," Marcus interrupted. "Right now, our best contractors are telling us this helicopter is unfixable. If there's even a chance that someone with inside knowledge can help, I need to explore it." As the security guards continued their patrol, Marcus found himself in an unprecedented situation. The most advanced military technology in the world might be saved by a homeless veteran that everyone else wanted to ignore. Robert stood quietly at the fence, understanding that his fate was now in the hands of military bureaucracy. But for the first time in months, Marcus felt a glimmer of hope about the helicopter sitting silently on the tarmac. The sun had set completely now, leaving the airfield bathed in the harsh glare of security lights. Tomorrow would bring General Harrison's meeting, and Marcus would need to have answers. Whether those answers came from expensive contractors or a homeless veteran remained to be seen. As Marcus walked back toward the helicopter, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to make either the best or worst decision of his military career. The $40 million question was about to be answered by the most unlikely source imaginable. The night air was cool against his face as he took one last look at the Apache. Tomorrow, everything would change. He just hoped it would change for the better. Lieutenant Rodriguez returned with a tablet full of information about Robert Chen. Her expression was unreadable as she approached Marcus near the helicopter. "Sir, you need to see this," she said, handing him the tablet. "Master Sergeant Robert Chen, 23 years of service, specialist in Apache helicopter maintenance and repair. He was awarded the Army Commendation Medal 3 times for innovative maintenance solutions." Marcus scrolled through the service record, his eyes widening with each detail. Robert hadn't just worked on Apache helicopters. He had been one of the military's leading experts on their maintenance and repair systems. "What happened to him?" Marcus asked, though he suspected the answer wouldn't be pleasant. "Medical discharge in 2020 due to PTSD and chronic pain from a training accident. He struggled with the transition to civilian life, lost his apartment, and has been homeless for about 2 years. Rodriguez paused. Sir, according to this record, he holds a top-secret security clearance that's currently inactive but could be reactivated. Marcus felt a mixture of excitement and guilt. Here was a man who had dedicated his life to military service, only to be abandoned by the system he had served so faithfully. Now, that same system desperately needed his expertise. There's more, Rodriguez continued. I found references to something called the Chen Protocol in several maintenance manuals. It appears he developed unofficial repair procedures that were widely used but never officially adopted. The pieces were falling into place. Robert Chen wasn't just claiming to know about Apache helicopters. He was one of the people who had helped define how they were maintained and repaired. His homeless appearance had caused everyone to dismiss him, but his credentials were impeccable. Marcus looked back toward the fence where Robert waited patiently. The man had been trying to help, and everyone had assumed he was just another transient looking for attention. The irony was almost too painful to bear. Lieutenant, I need you to contact the base commander immediately. I'm going to recommend emergency reactivation of Master Sergeant Chen's security clearance under the urgent national security provision. Rodriguez looked surprised. Sir, that's a highly unusual request. The paperwork alone could take weeks. Then we'll expedite it, Marcus replied firmly. This helicopter has been sitting here for 3 weeks costing taxpayers thousands of dollars per day. If Chen can fix it, we need to give him the chance. As Marcus walked back toward the fence, he realized he was about to challenge the entire military acquisition system. The idea that a homeless veteran could solve problems that stump teams of expensive contractors would be difficult for his superiors to accept. Robert was still waiting at the fence, his patient demeanor suggesting he was used to being ignored. When he saw Marcus approaching, he straightened slightly, his military bearing still evident despite his circumstances. Master Sergeant Chen, Marcus said, using Robert's former rank intentionally. I've reviewed your service record. It's impressive. Robert's eyes brightened with recognition of respect he hadn't received in years. Thank you, sir. I tried to tell them about my background, but nobody listens to homeless veterans, Marcus finished. That's about to change. I'm going to recommend emergency reactivation of your security clearance so you can examine this helicopter properly. The hope in Robert's eyes was unmistakable, but it was tempered with caution. Sir, I appreciate the gesture, but the system doesn't work that way. There are procedures, protocols, chain of command issues. You're right, Marcus agreed. Under normal circumstances, this would be impossible. But this isn't normal circumstances. We have a $40 million helicopter that's been grounded for 3 weeks with no solution in sight. Robert nodded slowly. The contractors are approaching it all wrong. They're treating each system failure as separate issues, but in Apache helicopters, everything is interconnected. You can't fix the hydraulics without understanding the computer systems, and you can't reset the computers without addressing the power management. The technical accuracy of Robert's assessment was impressive. Marcus had heard similar explanations from contractors, but they had lacked the confident certainty that Robert displayed. If I can arrange for your security clearance reactivation, how long would you need to assess the helicopter? Marcus asked. Robert considered the question carefully. Give me 4 hours with the maintenance manuals and access to the aircraft. I'll know within that time frame whether my solution will work. 4 hours versus 8 months. The contrast was stark enough to make Marcus's decision easier. Even if Robert's solution didn't work, they would only lose a few hours rather than months of expensive contractor time. I'll need to clear this with General Harrison, Marcus said. He's not going to like the unconventional approach. Sir, with respect, unconventional problems sometimes require unconventional solutions, Robert replied. The military taught me that sometimes you have to improvise when standard procedures fail. Marcus smiled at the response. It was exactly the kind of military pragmatism that had been lost in layers of bureaucracy and risk-averse procedures. Sometimes the best solutions came from people who understood the equipment better than the manuals. Wait here, Marcus told Robert. I'm going to make some calls. As Marcus walked away from the fence, he realized he was about to stake his career on a homeless veteran's claim that he could fix what experts couldn't. It was either brilliant or career suicide, but at this point, those might be the same thing. The base commander's office was still lit despite the late hour. Colonel David Park had been following the helicopter situation closely, and Marcus knew he would be receptive to any solution that didn't involve more contractor delays. Sir, I need to discuss an unusual situation regarding the Apache helicopter, Marcus began, then explained Robert's background and proposal. Colonel Park listened intently, his expression growing more interested as Marcus detailed Robert's service record and technical expertise. You're telling me we have a former Apache specialist living in our backyard, and nobody thought to consult him? That's exactly what I'm saying, sir. His appearance and circumstances caused everyone to dismiss him, but his credentials are exceptional. Park leaned back in his chair, considering the implications. The optics of this are challenging. If word gets out that we needed a homeless veteran to fix our helicopter, it raises questions about our contractor selection process. With respect, sir, Our contractor selection process has already failed, Marcus replied. At this point, we need results more than we need to protect the system's reputation. The colonel nodded slowly. What do you need from me? Emergency security clearance reactivation for Master Sergeant Chen, and authorization to give him supervised access to the helicopter for assessment purposes. Park stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the airfield where the Apache sat under the security lights. If this works, it saves us millions of dollars and months of delays. If it doesn't work, we've lost nothing but a few hours. That's my assessment as well, sir. And if Chen successfully fixes the helicopter, it proves that our acquisition system is fundamentally broken, Park continued. That's a conversation the Pentagon won't want to have. Marcus realized the political implications of Robert's potential success. It would highlight the inefficiency of the current system and raise uncomfortable questions about contractor dependencies and cost overruns. Sir, regardless of the political implications, we have a mission to complete. That helicopter needs to be operational. Park turned back to Marcus with a decisive expression. I'll approve the emergency clearance reactivation, but Chen works under close supervision, and this stays between us until we know the results. As Marcus left the colonel's office, he felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He had just convinced his superior to authorize an unprecedented solution to their problem. Now he had to make sure it worked. The paperwork for Robert's clearance reactivation would take several hours to process, even on an emergency basis. Marcus decided to use that time to review the contractor reports and prepare for Robert's assessment. As he walked back toward the helicopter, Marcus couldn't help but reflect on the irony of the situation. The military's most advanced technology might be saved by one of its most forgotten veterans. It was a story that would either highlight the system's failures or prove its ultimate resilience. The security lights cast harsh shadows across the airfield as Marcus prepared for what might be the most important night of his career. Tomorrow, he would either be explaining to General Harrison how a homeless veteran had solved their $40 million problem, or he would be explaining why he had risked his career on a desperate gamble. Either way, the Apache helicopter would finally get the attention it deserved from someone who truly understood it. Lieutenant Rodriguez approached with an update on Robert's clearance status. Sir, the paperwork has been expedited, but it will still take until morning to process. Master Sergeant Chen will need to report to base security at 800 hours. Marcus nodded, then walked back to the fence where Robert waited. The man had been standing there for over an hour, showing the patience and discipline that had served him well during his military career. Chen, Your clearance reactivation is being processed. Report to base security at 800 tomorrow morning. If everything checks out, you'll have access to the helicopter by 1000 hours. Robert's expression showed relief mixed with determination. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. I hope not, Marcus replied. A lot is riding on this. As Robert walked back toward the homeless encampment, Marcus remained at the fence, staring at the Apache helicopter. Tomorrow would determine whether he had found a solution or created a bigger problem. The night air was cool and still, broken only by the distant hum of base security patrols. Marcus had made his decision, and now he had to live with the consequences. The $40 million helicopter sat silently on the tarmac, waiting for its unlikely savior. As he finally turned to leave, Marcus caught sight of Robert's figure disappearing into the darkness beyond the fence. The man who might save the helicopter was returning to a homeless camp, carrying the weight of tomorrow's expectations. The contrast was almost too stark to comprehend. A military expert reduced to living in the woods, called upon to solve a problem that had stumped the system's most expensive contractors. It was a story that would either restore faith in military ingenuity or expose the fundamental flaws in how the system operated. Marcus walked back toward the command building, knowing that tomorrow would bring either vindication or career-ending consequences. The Apache helicopter would finally get the chance to fly again, or it would remain a $40 million monument to bureaucratic failure. Either way, the story of Master Sergeant Robert Chen and the Apache helicopter would be one that neither Marcus nor the military would soon forget. The following morning arrived with the crisp clarity of autumn. Marcus had barely slept, his mind racing through various scenarios of how the day might unfold. At 6:30 hours, he was already in his office, reviewing the contractor reports one final time before Robert's arrival. Lieutenant Rodriguez knocked and entered with a cup of coffee and an update. Sir, Master Sergeant Chen reported to base security 30 minutes early. His clearance came through without any issues. He's currently completing the required safety briefings. Marcus felt his stomach tighten with nervous anticipation. How did he look? Different, sir. Security provided him with temporary uniforms and access to the base facilities. He cleaned up and looks. Well, he looks like a master sergeant again. The transformation Robert had undergone was significant. Yesterday he had been dismissed as a homeless vagrant. Today he was being treated as a military expert. The change in circumstances reflected how quickly perceptions could shift when proper context was applied. What's the status with General Harrison's office? Marcus asked. The briefing has been moved to 1400 hours. He wants to see results from Chen's assessment before making any decisions about the helicopter's future. Marcus nodded. That gave Robert 4 hours to prove his theory correct. 4 hours to either vindicate Marcus's decision or confirm that the helicopter was beyond practical repair. At 1,000 hours, Marcus walked to the airfield where Robert was waiting near the helicopter. The transformation was remarkable, clean-shaven, wearing crisp military utilities, and carrying himself with the bearing of a professional NCO. Only his eyes showed the strain of the past few years. "Master Sergeant Chen reporting for duty, sir," Robert said with a proper salute. Marcus returned the salute, feeling the weight of military protocol and the hope it represented. "What do you need to begin your assessment?" "Access to the maintenance logs, the original failure reports, and about 3 hours with the aircraft systems," Robert replied. "I'd also like to review what the contractors attempted, so I don't duplicate their efforts." Dr. Wells, the lead contractor, was present to observe Robert's work. Her expression showed skepticism mixed with professional curiosity. "Master Sergeant, I'd be happy to walk you through our findings and explain why conventional repair approaches have failed." Robert listened politely as Dr. Wells explained the cascade failure theory and the various attempts to isolate and repair individual systems. Her technical knowledge was impressive, but Marcus noticed that Robert's questions focused on system interactions rather than individual component failures. "Doctor, your analysis is technically sound, but you're approaching this as separate problems," Robert explained. "In Apache helicopters, the hydraulic system, flight computers, and power management are integrated. When one fails, it triggers protective responses in the others." Dr. Wells frowned. "We've accounted for those interdependencies. The diagnostic systems show failures in multiple areas that would require extensive replacement." "The diagnostic systems are reporting secondary failures, not primary ones," Robert replied with quiet confidence. "May I examine the aircraft now?" Marcus nodded, and Robert approached the helicopter with the focused attention of someone who had spent decades working with these machines. His hands moved with practiced efficiency as he opened access panels and examined systems. After 30 minutes of silent examination, Robert emerged from beneath the aircraft with a small electronic component. "This is your problem," he announced, holding up what appeared to be a standard circuit board. Dr. Wells examined the component with interest. "That's the backup power relay for the hydraulic system. We tested it and found it to be functional." "It tests functional because it is functional," Robert agreed. "But it's not compatible with the software update that was installed 2 months ago. The timing parameters have changed, causing the relay to trigger cascade shutdowns." The explanation was simple enough that Marcus could follow it, but specific enough to demonstrate Robert's deep understanding of the systems. Dr. Wells looked genuinely surprised by the diagnosis. "How could we have missed something that fundamental?" she asked. "Because it's not in any official documentation," Robert replied. "The software update was deployed without updating the hardware compatibility charts. I encountered this exact problem at Fort Bragg in 2019 and developed a workaround." Marcus felt a surge of hope. "What's the solution?" "Replace this relay with an older model that's compatible with the new software, then reset the integrated systems in a specific sequence. Total time, about 2 hours. Cost, maybe $300. The simplicity of the solution was almost insulting after 3 weeks of expensive contractor assessments. Dr. Wells examined the relay more closely, her expression showing the embarrassment of a professional who had overcomplicated a simple problem. "Master Sergeant, assuming you're correct, why didn't the diagnostic systems identify this incompatibility?" she asked. "Because they were programmed to look for hardware failures, not software conflicts," Robert explained. "The relay works perfectly. It's just working with the wrong parameters." Marcus realized he was witnessing the difference between theoretical knowledge and practical experience. The contractors had superior equipment and extensive training, but Robert had something more valuable: institutional memory and hands-on problem-solving skills. "Do we have the compatible relay in stock?" Marcus asked. "The parts warehouse should have several," Robert replied. "It's a standard component that's been used in Apache helicopters for 15 years. Lieutenant Rodriguez was dispatched to retrieve the part, while Robert began preparing for the repair sequence. His confidence was infectious, and even Dr. Wells seemed convinced that the solution might actually work. "Master Sergeant, if this fix is successful, it will save the military millions of dollars and months of downtime," Marcus observed. "Sir, that's not why I'm doing this," Robert replied quietly. "I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. This helicopter represents the safety of pilots and the success of missions. It deserves to be fixed properly." The sincerity in Robert's voice was unmistakable. Despite everything he had been through, his commitment to military excellence remained intact. Marcus felt a deep respect for the man who had been dismissed as a homeless vagrant just 24 hours earlier. Rodriguez returned with the replacement relay, and Robert began the repair process. His movements were efficient and confident, showing no hesitation as he worked through the system integration procedures. Dr. Wells watched intently, taking notes on Robert's methodology. "Master Sergeant, this sequence isn't in any of the manuals I've reviewed." Because it's based on field experience rather than theoretical models, Robert explained while working. Sometimes the best solutions come from understanding how the systems actually behave rather than how they're supposed to behave. After 90 minutes of careful work, Robert completed the relay replacement and began the system reset sequence. The helicopter's diagnostic systems came online one by one, each showing normal operational status. "Sir, I'd like to request permission to conduct a full systems check," Robert announced. Marcus nodded, his heart racing with anticipation. The moment of truth had arrived. Either Robert's solution would work, or the helicopter would remain grounded despite his efforts. The systems check took another 30 minutes, with Robert methodically verifying each component's functionality. His calm professionalism was reassuring, but Marcus couldn't shake his nervousness about the outcome. Finally, Robert emerged from the cockpit with a satisfied expression. "Sir, all systems are showing normal operational status. The helicopter is ready for flight operations." The words seemed almost too good to be true. Marcus looked at Dr. Wells, who was staring at her diagnostic equipment with amazement. "All readings confirm normal operation," she said quietly. Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Master Sergeant Chen, you've just saved the military millions of dollars and restored a critical asset to operational status." Robert smiled modestly. "I just did what any good NCO would do, sir. I fixed what was broken." As news of the successful repair spread through the base, Marcus realized that Robert had done more than fix a helicopter. He had demonstrated the value of experience and institutional knowledge in an age of increasing technological complexity. The story of the homeless veteran who fixed the $40 million helicopter would become legendary within military circles. But for Marcus, it was a reminder that sometimes the best solutions come from the most unexpected sources. General Harrison's briefing that afternoon was unlike any Marcus had ever attended. Instead of explaining why the helicopter remained grounded, he was reporting on its successful repair and return to operational status. "Colonel Thompson, you're telling me that a homeless veteran fixed this helicopter in 2 hours after our contractors had worked on it for 3 weeks?" General Harrison asked. "That's correct, sir. Master Sergeant Chen identified a software compatibility issue that wasn't documented in any of our technical manuals." General Harrison looked at the repair report with a mixture of amazement and concern. "What does this say about our contractor selection process?" "Sir, it suggests that we may be overemphasizing equipment and credentials while undervaluing experience and institutional knowledge," Marcus replied carefully. The general nodded slowly. This is going to raise some uncomfortable questions at the Pentagon level. Marcus understood the implications. Robert's success highlighted systemic problems with military acquisition and maintenance procedures. It would force difficult conversations about contractor dependencies and the treatment of military veterans. What's Master Sergeant Chen's current status? General Harrison asked. He's been offered a position as a civilian contractor specializing in Apache helicopter maintenance, Marcus replied. Base housing is being arranged, and he'll be working with our maintenance teams to document his repair procedures. The general smiled for the first time during the meeting. At least we're doing the right thing for the man who solved our problem. As Marcus left the briefing, he reflected on the events of the past 2 days. A homeless veteran had been transformed back into a respected military expert. A $40 million helicopter had been restored to service, and important lessons had been learned about the value of experience over credentials. The story would be retold countless times, but Marcus knew the real lesson wasn't about one man's technical expertise. It was about the importance of listening to people regardless of their circumstances, and recognizing that sometimes the best solutions come from the most unlikely sources. Robert Chen had not only fixed a helicopter, he had reminded the military of the value of its own people and the importance of never giving up on those who had served with distinction. 2 weeks later, Marcus stood on the same airfield watching the Apache helicopter conduct its first training flight since the repair. The machine moved through the sky with the grace and power it was designed for, piloted by aviators who had no idea their aircraft had been saved by a homeless veteran. Robert Chen was now settled in base housing, working as a civilian contractor and training young mechanics in the nuances of Apache helicopter maintenance. His expertise was being documented and integrated into official repair procedures, ensuring that future problems could be solved more efficiently. The homeless encampment beyond the fence had been relocated, but not through force or bureaucratic pressure. Base social services had worked with local organizations to provide housing and support services for the veterans who had been living there. Lieutenant Rodriguez approached with a status report. Sir, the Apache has completed its certification flights and is cleared for operational missions. Master Sergeant Chen's repair procedures have been submitted to the Pentagon for inclusion in official maintenance protocols. Marcus nodded, feeling a sense of completion. The crisis that had threatened his career had become a story of redemption and efficiency. The helicopter was flying, the veteran was housed and employed, and the military had learned valuable lessons about the importance of institutional knowledge. What's Chen's assessment of our other aircraft? Marcus asked. He's identified several potential issues that could prevent future breakdowns, Rodriguez replied. His preventive maintenance recommendations could save millions in contractor costs. The ripple effects of Robert's success continued to spread through the military maintenance system. His practical approach to problem solving was being studied and implemented across multiple bases. As Marcus watched the helicopter disappear into the afternoon sky, he realized that the story of Master Sergeant Robert Chen would become part of military lore. It would be told in maintenance hangars and officer clubs, serving as a reminder that sometimes the most valuable resources are the ones that seem most unlikely. The fence around the airfield remained, but its meaning had changed. No longer was it just a barrier to keep people out. It had become a symbol of the importance of looking beyond appearances to find real solutions. Dr. Wells had returned to her consulting firm with a new appreciation for the value of field experience. Her report on the Apache repair had emphasized the importance of consulting with experienced personnel rather than relying solely on diagnostic equipment. The military's approach to contractor selection was being reviewed at the highest levels, with new emphasis on including experienced veterans in assessment teams. Robert's success had demonstrated that the most expensive solution wasn't always the best solution. Marcus's career had been enhanced rather than damaged by his decision to trust an unlikely source. His willingness to look beyond conventional solutions had earned him recognition as an innovative leader, willing to challenge established procedures. The Apache helicopter continued its flights, serving as a testament to the power of practical knowledge and the importance of never giving up on people who had dedicated their lives to military service. As the sun set over the airfield, Marcus reflected on the lessons learned from the past few weeks. The military's greatest strength wasn't its technology or its budget, it was its people. Master Sergeant Robert Chen had reminded everyone of that fundamental truth. The story of the homeless veteran who fixed the $40 million helicopter would be told for years to come, but its real value lay in the changes it had inspired. The military had been reminded that its most valuable assets weren't always the most obvious ones. In the end, Robert Chen had done more than fix a helicopter. He had helped fix a system that had forgotten the value of its own people. The Apache flew again, but more importantly, the military flew with a renewed appreciation for the expertise and dedication of those who had served. The fence around the airfield remained, but it no longer seemed like a barrier. It had become a reminder that the most important solutions often come from the most unexpected sources, and that true military strength lies in the willingness to listen to anyone who might have the answer. Master Sergeant Robert Chen had proven that experience and dedication could overcome any obstacle, even when that obstacle was a $40 million helicopter that had stumped the military's best contractors. His story would inspire future generations of military personnel to value knowledge and experience over credentials and appearances. The Apache helicopter soared through the sky, its engines running smoothly thanks to a $300 part and the expertise of a man who had been dismissed as a homeless vagrant. It was a reminder that in the military, as in life, the most valuable resources are often the ones that seem most unlikely to succeed. 3 months after the helicopter's repair, Marcus received an unexpected phone call that would change everything once again. The voice on the other end was crisp and professional, belonging to someone from the Pentagon's Office of the Inspector General. Colonel Thompson, this is Major Patricia Williams from the IG's office. We need to discuss the Apache helicopter repair incident at your base. There are some concerns that have been raised about the circumstances surrounding Master Sergeant Chen's involvement. Marcus felt his stomach drop. He had hoped the success of Robert's repair would overshadow any procedural irregularities, but apparently, someone had filed a complaint about the unconventional approach. "What kind of concerns, Major Williams?" Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Questions about security protocols, contractor oversight, and whether proper procedures were followed when allowing an unauthorized individual access to classified military equipment," Williams explained. "I'll be arriving at your base tomorrow to conduct a formal investigation." After hanging up, Marcus sat in his office staring at the commendation letter he had received just weeks earlier for his innovative problem-solving. Now, that same innovation was being questioned by investigators who seemed more concerned with procedure than results. Lieutenant Rodriguez knocked and entered with her usual morning reports, but Marcus could see the concern in her expression. "Sir, I heard about the IG investigation. This doesn't seem fair after everything that happened." "Fair or not, we need to prepare for a thorough review of our actions," Marcus replied. "Make sure all documentation regarding Chen's clearance reactivation and the helicopter repair is organized and available." The news of the investigation spread quickly through the base, creating an atmosphere of tension and uncertainty. Robert Chen, who had been thriving in his new role as a civilian contractor, was particularly affected by the development. "Colonel, I never intended to cause problems for you or the base," Robert said during a meeting in Marcus's office. "If my involvement is creating difficulties, I'll resign from the contractor position." Marcus looked at the man who had saved his career and the military millions of dollars. "Absolutely not. You did nothing wrong, and neither did we. We followed emergency procedures to solve a critical problem. But privately, Marcus worried about the investigation's potential impact. The military's bureaucratic culture often punished innovation and risk-taking, even when the results were overwhelmingly positive. Major Williams arrived the next day with a team of investigators and a thick folder of regulations and procedures. Her first meeting with Marcus was formal and intimidating, focusing on the chain of command decisions that had led to Robert's involvement. "Colonel Thompson, can you explain why you bypassed standard contractor procurement procedures to involve Master Sergeant Chen?" Williams asked, her tone suggesting she had already formed negative opinions. "Major, we faced an urgent operational need with a critical aircraft that had been grounded for weeks. Master Sergeant Chen's expertise provided a solution that saved time and money while restoring operational capability," Marcus explained. Williams consulted her notes. "But did you consider the security implications of allowing a homeless individual access to classified military equipment?" The question stung because it reduced Robert's military service and expertise to his temporary housing situation. Marcus felt his anger rising but maintained his professional composure. "Major, Robert Chen is a decorated veteran with 23 years of service and a previously held top-secret clearance. His housing situation didn't diminish his qualifications or his dedication to military service." The investigation continued for 3 days, with Williams and her team interviewing everyone involved in the helicopter repair. They questioned Robert extensively about his background, his time in the homeless encampment, and the circumstances that led to his involvement. Dr. Wells, the civilian contractor who had initially failed to diagnose the helicopter's problem, was also interviewed. Her testimony was crucial because she could verify the technical accuracy of Robert's solution and the failure of conventional approaches. Master Sergeant Chen's diagnosis was correct, and his repair solution was both effective and cost-efficient, Dr. Wells testified. "Our team had missed the software compatibility issue because we were focused on hardware failures." Despite the positive testimony about Robert's competence and the repair's success, Marcus could sense that the investigators were more interested in procedural violations than practical results. Colonel Park, the base commander, was called to testify about his authorization of Robert's security clearance reactivation. His defense was straightforward, but emphasized the unusual nature of the situation. "We faced a $40 million aircraft that had been grounded for weeks with no solution in sight. Master Sergeant Chen's credentials and expertise made him a logical resource to consult," Park explained. The investigation's tone began to shift when Williams interviewed the pilots who had been scheduled to fly the Apache before its breakdown. Their testimony emphasized the operational impact of having the helicopter grounded and the importance of Robert's quick repair. "Ma'am, that helicopter is critical to our mission readiness," explained Captain Jennifer Martinez, the Apache's primary pilot. "Master Sergeant Chen's repair got us back in the air when we needed it most." As the investigation progressed, Marcus realized that the real issue wasn't security or procedure. It was the embarrassment caused by Robert's success. The fact that a homeless veteran had solved a problem that stumped expensive contractors raised uncomfortable questions about the military's acquisition process. On the final day of the investigation, Williams interviewed Robert one last time. Marcus was allowed to observe, and he watched as Robert answered questions with the same quiet professionalism he had shown throughout the entire ordeal. "Master Sergeant Chen, do you understand why some people might have concerns about your involvement in this repair?" Williams asked. Robert considered the question carefully. "Yes, ma'am. I understand that my circumstances and the unconventional nature of my involvement might raise questions, but I also understand that sometimes mission requirements override standard procedures." "What do you mean by that?" "I mean that the helicopter needed to be fixed, and I had the knowledge to fix it. Everything else was just administrative details," Robert replied with simple honesty. Williams seemed taken aback by the straightforward response. Her questions had been designed to elicit admissions of improper conduct, but Robert's answers consistently focused on mission accomplishment and professional competence. After the interviews concluded, Williams and her team spent another day reviewing documentation and preparing their report. Marcus waited anxiously for their findings, knowing that his career and Robert's future role with the military hung in the balance. The investigation's conclusion was both surprising and disappointing. Williams found that while no regulations had been technically violated, the procedures used to involve Robert were irregular and potentially problematic. Colonel Thompson, while Master Sergeant Chen's repair was successful, the methods used to authorize his involvement created precedents that could be misused in the future, Williams explained during her final briefing. Marcus felt frustrated by the focus on potential future problems rather than actual past results. "Major, respectfully, we solved a critical problem using available resources and proper emergency procedures." "I understand your position, Colonel, but the appearance of impropriety is sometimes as important as actual impropriety," Williams replied. "The fact that this situation worked out well doesn't justify the risks taken." The investigation's final report contained mixed findings. It acknowledged the success of Robert's repair and the appropriateness of the emergency procedures used, but criticized the irregular nature of involving a homeless veteran in classified military operations. More importantly, the report recommended new procedures to prevent similar situations in the future, effectively making it more difficult for experienced veterans to contribute their expertise to military operations. Marcus read the report with growing anger. The investigators had missed the real lesson of Robert's success, instead focusing on bureaucratic concerns that would make the military less effective in the future. Robert's reaction to the report was characteristically measured. "Colonel, I knew this might happen when I first approached the fence. The system doesn't like to be embarrassed, even when it's been helped." "This isn't right," Marcus replied. "You solved a problem that saved millions of dollars and restored critical operational capability. The investigation should have resulted in commendations, not criticism." But Robert had a different perspective. "Sir, I didn't do this for recognition or to avoid criticism. I did it because it was the right thing to do. The helicopter is flying, and that's what matters most." The aftermath of the investigation created a complex situation. Robert kept his civilian contractor position, but new restrictions were placed on his access to classified systems. The procedures that had allowed his rapid involvement were modified to include additional oversight and approval requirements. Marcus received a letter of counseling in his personnel file, noting the irregular procedures used during the helicopter repair. It wasn't a career-ending punishment, but it served as a warning about future unconventional approaches to problem solving. The story of the investigation spread through military circles, creating a chilling effect on innovation and risk-taking. Officers became more reluctant to pursue unconventional solutions, even when standard procedures were failing. Dr. Wells, meanwhile, incorporated lessons from Robert's approach into her consulting practice. Her company began employing retired military personnel as advisors, recognizing the value of practical experience in solving complex technical problems. The Apache helicopter continued flying successful missions, its perfect operational record serving as a testament to Robert's expertise. But the bureaucratic aftermath had created an environment where similar solutions might be more difficult to implement in the future. Marcus found himself in a difficult position. His superiors praised the helicopter's return to service, while simultaneously warning him about the methods used to achieve that success. The mixed messages reflected the military's struggle between efficiency and procedure. 6 months after the investigation, Marcus was promoted to full colonel, but the letter of counseling remained in his file as a reminder of the risks associated with innovation. His new position gave him more authority, but also more responsibility for ensuring that procedures were followed precisely. Robert continued his work with the maintenance teams, but under increased scrutiny. His expertise was valued, but his unconventional path to involvement had created lasting suspicions about his methods and motivations. The homeless encampment beyond the fence had been permanently relocated, and new security procedures made it virtually impossible for unauthorized individuals to approach military aircraft. The physical barriers had been strengthened, but so had the bureaucratic ones. Lieutenant Rodriguez, now promoted to captain, remained Marcus's aide and continued to believe that Robert's involvement had been the right decision. "Sir, that helicopter is still flying perfect missions because of what we did. How can that be wrong?" Marcus shared her frustration, but had learned to work within the system's limitations. "It's not wrong, but it's not simple either. The military values predictability and procedure, even when they're less efficient than alternatives." As Marcus looked back on the events of the past year, he realized that Robert's success had been both a triumph and a tragedy. The helicopter had been fixed, but the system had learned the wrong lessons from the experience. The real story wasn't about one man's technical expertise or one officer's willingness to take risks. It was about an organization's struggle to balance efficiency with procedure, innovation with security, and results with process. Robert Chen had fixed more than a helicopter. He had exposed fundamental tensions within the military bureaucracy. But instead of addressing those tensions, the system had chosen to strengthen the barriers that made similar solutions more difficult to achieve. The Apache helicopter continued to fly, carrying pilots who would never know how close they had come to losing their aircraft to bureaucratic paralysis. It served as a reminder that sometimes the most important battles are fought not against enemy forces, but against the systems that are supposed to support military effectiveness. In the end, Master Sergeant Robert Chen had won the battle but lost the war. The helicopter flew, but the precedent for future innovation had been weakened by investigation and regulation. The military had been reminded of the value of its people, but had chosen to focus on the risks rather than the benefits of their expertise. The story would be told and retold, but its lessons would be filtered through the lens of bureaucratic caution rather than operational excellence. Robert's success had become a cautionary tale about the dangers of thinking outside the box, even when thinking outside the box was exactly what was needed. The fence around the airfield remained, now reinforced with additional barriers and procedures. It had become a symbol not of protection, but of the military's increasing isolation from the very people who had once served it most faithfully. Marcus stood at his office window, watching the Apache helicopter conduct another successful training mission. The aircraft performed flawlessly, thanks to a $300 part and the expertise of a man who had been treated as both a hero and a security risk. The complexity of the situation reflected the broader challenges facing the military in an era of increasing bureaucratization and risk aversion. Robert's story had become a mirror, reflecting both the organization's greatest strengths and its most troubling weaknesses. As the helicopter disappeared into the distance, Marcus wondered what other solutions might be waiting just beyond the fence, held back by procedures designed to protect the military from risks that might actually be opportunities for excellence. The story of Master Sergeant Robert Chen and the Apache helicopter would continue to evolve, but its fundamental message remained unchanged. Sometimes the most valuable resources are the ones that seem most unlikely to succeed, and sometimes the greatest risks come from refusing to take any risks at all.